Welcome to the Buds and Reality Show. I'm Sean Collins, the guy with a lot to say. And back in the house, we got Lars Mapstead back, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing, brother?
Woo-hoo. We're doing good right here on your show again.
Yeah, you're back.
Back.
We had to have you back, man, just because I like what you're doing out there. You've been making your rounds. You've been doing a lot of traveling actually lately. Let's let's start with that because you've been over, I don't want to say all over the United States, but you've been through a good chunk of it.
Yeah, I've been traveling around. I'm actually getting ready for a big trip right now. I'm going to go to Maine convention next weekend, and then I'm going to Vegas for the Nevada convention, and then I'm likely heading back to New Hampshire for Pork Fest. So I've got a little bit of a runaround going on right now, and there was a couple other events that people were asking me to get to. So yeah, it's been busy. I also went to Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee. So yeah, I've been running around recently quite a bit. Yeah.
Are you going to make your way to Detroit ever or Michigan?
Yeah, in fact I have a really good buddy named Detroit Joe that lives out here, but he grew up in Detroit, and so I'll probably make a trip out there with him so he can show me around the hood.
Absolutely. You'll have to hit me up. I'm pretty much in the city. So,
Awesome.
hit me up. I'll show you some good spots and we'll get your name out there for sure, because we're digging what you're doing out here, brother. There's a lot of us actually who are about it. So, it's glad to see you out there doing it. It's you made it from state to state to state. Are you driving or are you flying?
No, flying to those ones, but I'm gonna be doing also like a West Coast tour here pretty soon as well, because a lot of people have been asking me to come down to Southern California, and I'll head down there and go to San Diego and in Los Angeles and that sort of thing down there, and meet some affiliates down there, and shake hands and meet the people.
Nice, nice. Now, one of the things that really draws me to you is your financial knowledge because you've actually run some very successful businesses. There's been a couple, haven't there? There's been a couple of businesses that have really jumped off for you and have put you in a really good place. I appreciate that because in order to understand the political scheme, you first have to understand economics. And I believe Rothbard actually said something like that, on the same level. You have to understand the money before you understand politics, and you're there. So, I mean, with that being said, what is your generalization on the whole debt ceiling thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a charade. It's kind of just the illusion of choice that we always see coming out of Washington, right? The time to argue about the debt is not when there's the debt ceiling, which is just an artificial thing that they could get rid of the debt ceiling tomorrow if they wanted to, and they could just abolish it forever. It's an artificial thing that's just put in place. When the time to deal with the debt is when you're doing the budget and you're deciding how much money to spend, right? That's the time that that's supposed to be the time. So if you balance the budget, you don't have to have a debt ceiling because you never need to increase the debt, right? Like that. So this whole, like, they just did this debt ceiling thing, and then they just suspended the debt ceiling till 2025. Right. So now there's basically unlimited upside and they don't have to worry about it. And the thing is, what's crazy is the Democrats could have suspended this when they had control. They could have just said, we're not doing debt ceiling anymore. The Republicans could say, we're not doing debt ceiling anymore, right? But they like to use this as a good cop, bad cop thing, right? And it comes up every so many years. It's like they roll it. It's like they have like some book that they read out of that's like, well, what kind of stupid crap can we come up and foist on the American public today? Oh, look, we haven't rolled out the debt ceiling stupid fiasco in a while. We'll do that one, right? And then the Republicans can like act like they really care about the debt. And the thing is they just passed that omnibus bill like whatever 6 months or 9 months ago for the budget, right? Whenever they did it, that 4,000 page thing that no one read kind of a thing, that was the budget, right? So they're not even reading it, and they're just throwing everything in the kitchen sink into it, whatever pork barrel earmark spending stuff they can get in there. And then they feign outrage later on that, oh, we've got to rein in spending. Well, you voted for the stupid pork barrel spending, and now you want to rein it in? Like, you're hypocrites. You're like the most, the Democrats, they don't say we want to be fiscally responsible. They just say we just want to spend all the time, right? But it's almost worse. The Republicans are almost worse because they feign that they care. right? They're like, oh, we want balanced budget, we want to curtail spending, and it's the evil Democrats that are stopping us from doing this. And it's like, no, you clowns voted for it, right? If you had any, to top the whole thing off, which is just the icing on the cake of the hypocrisy of this whole fiasco, is they called it the Fiscal Responsibility Act. There's nothing fiscally responsible. The thing is like, they must have like watched the Democrats roll out the Inflation Reduction Act, and they're like, they actually did that and people believed it. We're going to call this the Fiscal Responsibility Act, guys. It'll be hilarious. People will totally buy it, and it'll make us look really good, but it won't be at all fiscally responsible, right? It's kind of like the Affordable Care Act or the Patriot Act, right? The Patriot Act, that was so patriotic, right? It just stole all of our freedom.
Everyone.
Yeah, we can just spy on everybody. It's super patriotic, guys. You'll love it. And the Affordable Care Act, that's going to make everything affordable, right? Because it has affordable in the name. So when you have fiscal responsibility in the name, it's obviously fiscally responsible, right? I mean, so I think maybe they're using the new AI or something, and they're just like, hey, Chat GPT, give me some line that will sell the public our line of crap that we're about to shove down their throat and make it sound really good. And then they press enter and they get like 10 responses. They're like, that one's good, and they cut that, and then they send that off to the stupid media, and the media just parrots it. And I get these people, and they're like, well, you got to understand that this debt ceiling is for money that's already been spent. But that's bullshit. That's like, because the thing is, they just suspended it till 2025, and the thing says the new debt ceiling will be whatever we've spent up to till that day. That's what the new debt ceiling will be, right? So it's not for it. They haven't spent it yet, right? They haven't spent it. So that is a false, like, parroting thing, that the gaslighting, and the people buy it, because that's the responses I'm getting on social media. The guy was like outraged at me. He's like, you have to understand, this is because of spending that's already been spent, and we have to pay it. And I'm like, no, that's not what this is at all. Right? Otherwise they wouldn't suspend it all the way to 2025, and they'd put a number on it. They didn't put a number on it. It's just open-ended. It's open-ended, right? So that's not money you spent. It's crap. And most people don't have the time to like really think about this. They just listen to the news, and whatever the news says, they kind of trust, and then they parrot that news, right? And that's all the time they have for. And they want to sound like they know what they're talking about. And whatever news person that's talking, they're like, that guy's my authority, so I'm just going to parrot whatever he says, and then I'll sound good, like I know what I'm talking about, right? It's a joke. The whole system is just such a sham. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Well, the craziest thing is, because I read a lot of that. I didn't read all of it. I didn't need to read all of it, because I fucking knew right off the rip, what they were up to. And what it says is pretty much they're going to rob Peter to pay Paul. The debt ceiling is unlimited until 2025.
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what could possibly go wrong with this right here?
Yeah, the debt ceiling is a charade anyway, because they can do this whenever they want. They can waive it whenever. It's just a fantasy thing. And like I said, it's like literally a good cop, bad cop thing that they just roll out every once in a while, right? It's not always an issue. It's just whenever they want to make it an issue, right? And it's like, I think these guys all get the Democrats and the Republicans in Washington all get together for beer at the end of the day. Absolutely. And like pat each other on the back and laugh at how much they've pulled the wool over the American public's eyes. I mean, and the only reason I think that is because I was getting sued one time, and it was for I had this music business that was for MP3s. Remember when MP3s first came out?
Yeah.
Okay, and so I had built a search engine called MP3 Board, and you could search on it. You could type in like Madonna.mp3, and it would show you all the websites that had Madonna.mp3 as a name on their website, right? And it didn't link to their file. It didn't link to a file. It didn't even say that Madonna.mp3 was actually a file. It just said that they have that word. So we were like Google essentially early on, right? But the recording industry sued us, and Sony sued me, Bertelsmann, all the big dogs sued me, and like they were just coming at me. And I remember like meeting with my lawyer, and I was talking to them, and it was like this big to do, and they wanted like $10 million to settle from me. It was really gross, right? And so I remember afterwards, the two lawyers, the lawyer that was against me, and he was like attacking me. My lawyer invited him out to lunch. And I was like, what are you going to lunch with that guy for? He's the enemy, bro. That guy's trying to, shaft me. And he's like, oh, well, I got to work with that guy later. I mean, we work on cases all the time together. So, I mean, he's kind of like my bro. And I'm like, dude, no. Why did I hire you then? He's the enemy. Like that guy, you're here to beat that guy.
Well, I totally
Right?
get that. And I can't remember who it was exactly, but I remember Rand Paul came out on social media and, he said, me and this guy, and I really wish I could remember who it was. It was a Democrat, obviously.
Yeah.
Like me and this guy are at odds all the time on the Senate floor. But then after work, we can go play golf together. And they were out playing golf together. And these two guys got heated, Rand Paul and God, I wish I remember who it was.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the coyote and the sheepdog. Sam, and you remember in the cartoon?
Yes.
And the
yes.
sheepdog and the coyote's always trying to get the sheep, and the sheepdog's just always punching the coyote in the head. And then they clock out and they're like having lunch, and then they clock back in and start beating each other up again. So maybe that's just what Washington's all about. And maybe they just, they're doing their thing, but they're all chummy together later. It's the more I look into politics, the more cynical I get. The more I delve into this realm, the more I'm just like, this system is so broken and so messed up, and it needs so much work to get it like right, to right the ship. There's a lot to unpack and a lot to do for sure to fix this.
Absolutely. I actually call politics politricks now. And I actually stole that from Ice-T. Ice-T is a very well-versed man when he talks about government. He hates both sides. I don't know how he votes or anything, but he called it politricks, and I dig that because that's what it is. They play us like a fiddle every time. They pretend they care about X, Y, and Z when all they care about is ABC, which is their pocketbook.
That's right.
Or their friend's pocketbook. And we all knew how the debt ceiling thing was going to go. And they put on the dog and pony show for us and was like, okay, well, the Democrats still want to agree to this, blah, blah, blah. And the Republicans don't want to agree to this, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, we knew they were going to raise the debt ceiling. Yeah. We knew they were going to do it because it's the only way they play the game. You know,
in fact, I've watched this so many times that you can actually play the stock market a little bit with the knowledge of how this usually plays out. So what you do is going into it, when they start really puffing it up, you start shorting the stock market. And because there's all this fear that they're going to, fail on the debt and they're going to default and America is going to blow up and turn into a pile of crap because we lost our, debt rating, right? So the stock market starts selling off and it's like, oh crap. And then you wait and then you have to start watching, like, how close are they? When are they going to, and a few days before they get to the really close to passing it, you get out of your short positions and you go long. And then they pass the debt ceiling thing. And what did the stock market do today? Up 700 points. Imagine that. Right? Because all the fear is now out of the system. They're like, oh, they're not going to default. So it's time to invest. Right? So you can kind of just like watch it and play the market a little bit and make some money off of it, which is kind of an interesting thing. But I've been burned before because I got caught up in the fear. And I thought, oh, they're going to default, right? Because I was like, I didn't see through their sham, right? But once you see through their sham and you can start kind of telegraphing exactly what's going to go on, like you said, you already knew what was going to happen.
Well, I mean, because they do it every time. It never fails. Like, they're going to always agree to raise the debt ceiling.
Yeah.
But with that is going to come with some inflation. And by some, I mean a lot, because if you're going to give the U.S. government an unlimited debt ceiling for, a year and a half, that's going to be disastrous. This
green lights the debt from 32 trillion to 40 trillion, essentially, is really what it's doing. And they're coming out and they're like, oh, well, we're gonna have a 1% cut in spending or whatever, right? But if you look at like the spending in 2019 and you compare that to the spending that we have today, it's so much higher that even if you cut like 15%, you wouldn't get back to 2019 levels. Like we blew up under Trump, and all the printing of money that we did in 2020 when we were just helicopter dropping money on people, and the budget exploded. And so instead of like coming back to pre-pandemic levels, which is what we should do, they were like, this is the new floor. The new floor is the old high of the pandemic level. So we can't spend less than that, right? And I got to thinking about government. It's like, when is the last time you heard government doing massive layoffs across the board? Have they ever done it in your life? Nope. Because
No, they hire more.
Because government only knows how to grow.
Yes.
That's it. They do not know how. So in Silicon Valley, if you're running a company, every couple of years, normally 10% of the employees are let go. That's like a standard thing, right? And they just got through doing a round of that. Every company does it all at the same time so they can kind of get cover for not, and they don't get sued, right? But they all do it because they want to like bring in fresh blood, and they want to cut the lowest employees, the lowest production employees, and that sort of thing, and bring in new good people, right? But the government doesn't do that. The government keeps all the bad people and then just keeps adding more, right?
Adding more bad people at that.
Adding more bad people. Well, yeah, well, government breeds mediocrity is what I say, right? Because the people that end up in government are not the people that are like super go-getters, that are like the entrepreneurs that just really want to kick ass. They're the people that just kind of want to like do the job, show up, go home, and not really, excel at anything, right? Like people in government for the most part don't want to excel at anything. And so the lowest common denominator ends up working for government. And we've gotten to the point now where there's so many government employees. It's something like 30% of all Americans are in some way, shape, or form a government employee, whether it's state, federal, local, that sort of thing, right? And when you get that many people and they are allowed to vote for protecting themselves, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that they're going to continue to vote to make government bigger, because that's how they get their money. That's their job, right? If you were working for Microsoft and you could vote that the federal government gives Microsoft $20 billion this year, and you knew that $20 billion would probably go to helping your salary, would you vote for it? Probably.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And so that's exactly what's going on, is the people are like basically voting for them to get themselves to get bigger salaries. So the government is just on a steamroll to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's already, I think, reached the tipping point where there's not really a way to claw back at it, because so many people are dependent on it now. Right. And it's not just that they're dependent on it for their jobs, but something like 70% of all Americans get some form of government assistance.
Wow.
And when you're at that level, because maybe you don't get it directly, but maybe your dad does, or your sibling does, or something like that. And so in some way you're touched by this government assistance, essentially, right? And so when you have that, it's really hard for anybody to say, well, I want to shrink that. Because when you say I want to shrink that, what you're saying is you want to shrink the benefit for my brother, or you want to shrink the benefit for my grandfather who served in the war, or whatever it is, right? Nobody wants to see their entitlement shrink, right? And so it's really hard. And we've gotten to this point, unfortunately, with our debt, where the main three entitlements, which is Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, are the majority of the budget, right? So if you say I want to balance the budget, even if you were to eliminate 100% of the military, we'd still be deficit spending. If you were to eliminate the whole military and most of all other government, right, we would still be deficit spending, right? It's really crazy when you start looking at it. And I only really looked at it when somebody challenged me, because I kept saying, well, I'm going to cut government. And they're like, okay, what are you going to cut? And I was like, okay, I better go look and have a plan for what it is I'm going to cut, right?
Well, yeah, because you can't just cut government, because what are you cutting? You're cutting the post office.
Right? So I started really digging into it, and I
whatever.
was like, yeah, I started digging into it, and I'm like, oh, this is a mess. Now I know why no one ever talks about it, because it's political suicide. Like if a senator comes out and says, hey, we've got to really have a honest discussion about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, they're done. They're voted out the next time, right? Because they're like, no, we're not touching any of that. And it's like, well, if you add those things, and then you add the $400 billion to $700 billion of interest that we're now paying on the debt, right? And that's only going to continue to grow. It's reaching that point of unsustainability. And I've been looking at all these charts that kind of show the projections of all that stuff over the next like 20 years. And you know, that it starts becoming like 50% of GDP in order to pay for all these things. And so essentially they're going to either have to cut benefits at some point, or they're going to have to raise taxes dramatically. Or the third option, which is the option that I prefer, is that we're going to have to grow our way out of it. We're going to have to kick ass so much in America that our gross domestic product and the production of America grows so much that those payments become a lot less of the whole pie, right? That's
Right.
really the only solution I see, other than cutting or raising taxes, is to really just grow our way out of it. And so a lot of things I've been focusing on are ways to really kick the economy into high gear, right? Because that's what we need to do if we're gonna fix some of this situation. So, and a lot of that has to do with getting energy independent. So, because the cost of energy is embedded in everything. If we reduce the cost of energy dramatically, we will reduce the cost of, you know, everything. So we're going to cut inflation with that. And it's also a national security issue, because if we're relying on other countries for oil or for energy, and we go to war and those guys cut us off, like we've cut off Russia or we've cut off other countries, we're going to be in deep crap, right? So we need to make sure that we're in charge of our energy, not other people, right? And it's the same thing with like pharmaceuticals, all that kind of stuff. We need to be in charge of that stuff. The things that are mission critical for the success of America, we have to be in charge of.
Now, but when you say we, do you mean we as the people or we as government?
I think, you know, government has a role in kind of protecting some of that stuff, but I'm loath lots of regulation, and I'm really for competition, but there's some things that I think we have to produce here in America because it's of national security interest, right? There's things that are necessary to produce here, because if we go to war and say we end up in a war with China or something like that, they manufacture a lot of the pharmaceuticals that we are taking, right? And some of those pharmaceuticals are life critical dependent, right? Like if you don't get them, you're dying, right? So if we were to go to war and China said, we're not sending you any more pharmaceuticals, then people are dying left and right in America. And that was because of poor planning from our leadership, right? Because they weren't thinking ahead and being like, hey, you know what, this is a problem, guys, and we need to like address it, you know? So it's some of those kind of things. But like one of the ways that I think we can address that is my whole tax system, right? If we get rid of the income tax and we like basically reimagine our whole tax system, it's going to bring in a ton of business to America, because a lot of companies flee because of the overtaxation, right? But if we become the least tax system for companies to come in and do their business, then that's going to drive a lot of business into America, and companies are going to be coming back, high-paying jobs are going to be coming back, and we're already the good place to do business because of our legal structure. Like people really like to do business in America just because of all the protections that are offered for, you know, legally, right? But they don't like doing business because of all the regulations and all the taxation that we have. So we need to cut that, you know, not like down to zero so that like everybody's just running around polluting the universe and like screwing everyone, right? There has to be a little happy medium, but we need to like basically make it so that everybody wants to do business in America, and we need to be kicking ass, right? Like I don't want to be like the guy that's like weak and being a protectionist and saying, oh, we have to put tariffs on people because we're not strong enough to compete. No. I want to compete. I want us in America to be so badass that we don't have to worry about China kicking our butt, because we're kicking their butt, right? Our people can do that. Our people have the talent. Our people have the drive and the willingness to do that. We just have to like get government out of the way and let them succeed, right? That's what we need to do.
Well, because, you know, the free market's hardly free. Like anybody who knows better gets it, you know, like there's always government meddling and regulations to do this, that, or the other. And they tell you how to run your business, whichever way they choose, you know, because really at the end of the day, if you're not a big corporation, they don't want the small guy taking business. That's just what they want. So that's why they have these regulations involved, is to keep the small guy in their place per se, which is absolutely unacceptable in my terms, and which would be in most people's terms, which is why companies will leave America and go do their thing and then just send their shit here.
Yeah.
when really in theory, you know, I'm a firm believer in making everything here in America. I want all jobs here. I want all merchants here. I want everything here in America. And there wasn't anything that solidified that the most until we hit COVID, when we didn't have enough masks
Right.
or, you know,
It
people or anything like that.
yeah, it really became apparent when that kind of stuff went down, right? So, but another like policy that I'm really looking at to kind of supercharge the economy is we have all these gig workers, right? We have all these people that are doing Uber and Uber Eats, and they're
Yes.
doing all these different kinds of things. And a lot of people, that's their job. A lot of people, or it's their supplemental job, right? Like maybe you're 50 years old and you worked as a you know, construction guy or a welder, you know, iron worker kind of guy or something like that all your life. And now you're sort of retired. Maybe you hurt yourself and you can't work anymore at that job, but you still need to do something to like feed your family, right? So you can't work iron worker anymore. So you decide that what you're going to do is you're going to get on Uber and you're going to be an Uber driver, right? Part-time or something like that, right?
Right.
And the government, like you said, they don't want these small-time workers. So they keep putting more and more regulations on the gig economy, right? And they double tax the gig economy, right? So because the way that FICA works and the way that personal income works, right? Like if you're self-employment income, right? That's treated differently than if you're a wage worker for a company, right? So we need to like level the playing field. So we're calling it the fair FICA, right? Where we level the playing field for gig workers. I want to promote gig workers. I want, like, if you're a 20-year-old and you haven't like figured out your job market yet, but you're working in a gig economy and that's working for you, I want you to be productive. I'd rather people be working like 10 hours a week than no hours a week, right? Because the more people that are productive, the more they feel like they're part of society. They feel like they're contributing. When you're just sitting around on your butt doing nothing, you kind of feel not really good about yourself, right? And then you tend to do bad things, right? That's all the times ever I got in trouble in life was I was sitting around bored and had
Yes.
nothing to do and had nothing to show up for, right? So if people are willing to show up and work 10 hours a week or 15 hours a week or whatever and make themselves useful, if everybody did that, there's like 10 million people right now that could do gig economy work, but that are not, right? And if
Right.
those 10 million people put in 10 hours a week, the GDP would just explode, right? The economy would just absolutely go bananas. And there's 10 million unfilled jobs right now in America. There's 10 million people, there's 10 million jobs available that there's no worker for.
You mean Joe Biden didn't grow the economy and fill all these jobs like he said he was going to do? Is that what you're
Wait,
saying to me right now?
so when you lock down the economy and you get everyone fired and laid off from their job, and then they all go back to work, that's not creating jobs, bro. That's people going back to work. I don't understand how he can even take credit for that. And people want to champion. They're like, yes, Joe Biden, he's gotten unemployment down to the lowest amount in history. And I'm like, bro, yeah, the workforce, the labor force is at the lowest point it's been in the last 40 years. There's less people working today than at any time in the last 40 years. It's not a win that you think it is, bro.
And the thing is about the government does not create jobs. They don't.
No. Well,
Besides
unless it's a government job.
No, people create jobs. The
Yeah.
people create jobs. The people
Yeah.
who start businesses and put all their chips in and hire people, they're
Yeah.
the ones who are creating jobs, not the fucking government. Where do they
Yeah.
come up, saying, hey, we created all these jobs? They didn't create shit.
If anything, they hamper jobs, right? The only jobs they create is government jobs.
Yes. Which is like, they love growing those. I mean, they grew at 80,
Yeah.
87,000, in the IRS and whatnot. And that's nothing. I mean, there's more school employees, there's more, postal employees. And not to say those jobs aren't important, but like they're all government jobs and they're growing in droves.
Yeah, I have a policy team and we're meeting every week to really dig deep into different policies, right? And like instead of just saying like I'm going to cut stuff, like exactly what are you going to cut? What's your policy actually going to be? And so we're really kind of digging into the meat of that kind of stuff. But one of the things, and I started a lot of small businesses. Sometimes it was just me. Sometimes I had 2 or 3 people working with me, right? So I understand that scenario. And in that scenario, I really feel like government should be out of the way as much as possible. We should be promoting small business to just go bananas, right? They should be able to do as much stuff as they want to do. If you're under 10 employees and you're doing a business, I want to make it as easy as possible for you to run that business in America, because that's the economic engine. The majority of people in America work for small business. That's a fact. And
I
so
am
if
a
we can,
small business.
right. And so if we can create more small businesses, or if we can make it easier for small business, or if we can cut taxes and regulations dramatically for small businesses, then small businesses are going to thrive, and there's going to be a lot more of them. And what does that mean? That means more people are going to be working and the economy is going to be doing better. And so that's one of the regulations. That's one of the areas I want to focus on, is really just unleashing the power of the small business person, right? And like you said, the government kowtows to the corporations, and the corporations have their ear, and those corporations basically suppress all the small businesses from even kind of getting off the ground, because they don't want the competition, right? And
Right.
so what I want to create is, I want to create that competition from the regular guy out in America that's running his plumbing shop, that's running his electrician shop, that's, you know, working at the gas station. I want to level up those people and make those people the people that are benefiting from our economic engine, instead of just the rich and the elite and the corporations. And a big part of that is getting rid of the IRS, because the number one way that the Congress bros out corporations is they create loopholes, and they create tax incentives for giant corporations that don't apply to the little guy. The little guy can't take advantage of it, right? So we need to just get rid of the tax code, because it is basically a corrupt tool of Congress to grant favors to the rich and the elites. And we need to just end all the loopholes forever, just get them out of there, right? And open up the economic engine that we used to have, right? I think part of it is we've just gotten so overregulated and so oppressive with our government that it stifles our whole economy, right? And what we need to do is just unleash the power of the American economy and the American worker, because I know people are hardworking. I see it every day when I'm talking to them, right? They're like, I just want to get by. I want to put food on my table. I want to go on a vacation every once in a while. I maybe want to buy a toy or two for myself, you know, because I'm working hard. And that's all that's all I really want. And I'm like, and I can tell that they're hard workers, right? And they just need to have government get the hell out of the way so that they can like unleash their potential, right?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I have a small painting business, and by small, I mean it's just me. I paint houses by myself. And for what I pay in taxes, and I'm not going to give you a number, but I'm going to tell you right now, it's not Christian. It's not
Yeah.
even Christian what I pay. And then there's people like, you know, the Jeff Bezos of the world, or whoever's
Yeah.
in the large corporations, who don't pay, they pay less than I do.
Yeah.
And here
In some, yeah. Yeah,
I
in some years they do. In some, it just depends on what kind of income they took that year or whatnot. And but yeah, if we move to the fair tax, which is the plan that I'm pushing,
yeah,
then you're gonna know exactly that Jeff Bezos is paying the exact same as you, and that you don't have to worry about, did he pay his fair share? Did he get, you know? And that's the thing with the tax system right now, is everybody just wants to feel like they're not being screwed, right? That's the bottom line. And right now the tax system, if you're looking at it and you're a regular guy, you feel screwed. You're like, why am I paying so much taxes? And why are my taxes going to bombs that are killing kids overseas? I'm not
right,
really sure,
exactly.
right? Right.
No.
So like, why isn't the taxes that I'm paying going to you know, help the homeless people downtown, to fix the roads, to fix my sewer and my water? I mean, at least if I'm paying taxes, if I have to pay crappy taxes, then at least have the things benefit me, right?
Right.
You know, because if you could just decide for yourself, if there was no taxation and you could decide for yourself, you'd be like, I'm driving down this road, you know what, this road's pretty crap. I'm going to get together with my boys and we're going to pave this road because it's trash right now. Or I'm going to get together with a local firm that does that and we're going to pull some resources together to make that happen, right? Kind of a thing.
Oh, yeah. And I think the fair tax system is actually a splendid idea, honestly, because it's a consumption tax. So you're not paying taxes until you buy something,
That's right. And you
which
can,
is
and if you
great.
Yeah, if you buy used stuff, you don't pay any tax at all. So it promotes buying used stuff, which means you're going to recycle stuff more. You're not going to consume as much, you know, and so that's going to be beneficial for all the greenies out there, right? They're gonna
Right.
love that part of it, right? But just the fact that you don't have to be afraid that you might go to jail because you didn't file something properly or you didn't, you know, do that. And the other thing is, we spend 6 billion man hours each year filing taxes. Think about that. 6 billion man hours each year filing taxes.
I can't even wrap my head around that number. Like
It's
I'm a
something like,
business owner, so I get man hours. So like
yeah,
6 billion.
6 billion. And it's something like $200 billion a year is spent on tax preparation services, right? Now think about if instead of dealing with taxes, you could paint 2 more houses.
Right.
How much, you know, that's money in your pocket.
That's big
So
bucks in my pocket.
that's big bucks in your pocket, right? So the thing is we are stifling the American worker because we're stealing their time. Not only is taxation stealing the damn money out of your pocket, but it steals your time, and it's oppressive, right? It's coercive government at its worst, right?
Yes.
So the fair tax isn't a utopia. It's not like the dream libertarian, you know, end game, right? Because the dream libertarian end game is we just don't pay taxes, right?
Oh,
I mean, that's
zero.
where we'd
Nothing,
love to get.
nothing.
But I tell people, look, if I have to pick between the coercive income tax system or the fair tax system, it's a no-brainer for me, right? It's a no-brainer for me. It's like, you abolish the IRS? Oh, hell yeah, right? I don't have to be under their thumb. They're not going to have armed agents coming to my house and questioning me or like sending me threatening letters anymore. I'm all for that, right? Because that's a whole nother layer of authoritarian crap that just shouldn't exist, right? It doesn't need to exist. We didn't have it before 1913, right? There was no income tax before 1913. So just like we got rid of prohibition, we repealed that amendment, we just need to repeal the 16th Amendment and get rid of it. Just make it go away and put a consumption tax in there and get on with our business and make us more productive and make us less like oppressed, essentially.
It's absolutely perfect in my eyes, just because a consumption tax is based on purchasing rather than your life. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like your life, you're not, I don't want to say your life is your work, but like you spend a good chunk of your life at your job. That's your time. And that's time you're never getting back ever. You know, time is money at the end of the day, is, you know, and me being a business owner, I understand that. Now, you know, that being said, you know, we go through all that, and a lot of my shows have been about money lately. And I want people to understand that it's because it's so important to understand the economy and the way money works, and what the government is doing is actually screwing us. The way they spend, the way they tax, and everything. And at the end of the day, we just need to get these motherfuckers out of here. They gotta go, because they're never gonna stop. The debt ceiling's never gonna end.
No.
They're going to tax us into slavery, which we already are slaves at, you know, to a point. You know, what percentage of your money is not slavery, you know?
Yeah. Wait, you're in Detroit, right?
Yeah.
So you know firsthand what happens when government fails.
Puh.
When government overpromises all their employees, like the garbage people and the fire people and the police people and all those people that Detroit kept every year, they're like, yeah, we're adding to your pension, bro. Oh yeah, we're going to give you more medical benefits. Oh yeah, we're going to give you all this stuff. And then what happened to Detroit? They filed bankruptcy.
And they took everything.
Everything, right? Everybody got wiped out, right?
Yes.
Well, guess what? Guess what? That's what's going to happen to the United States. That's what I keep telling people is, and people say, well, no, because the United States can just print money and get out of their problems by just printing more money, so the United States can never go bankrupt, which is true. But basically what happens if they have to print that much more money, it means the standard of living for all Americans drops dramatically. So it has the same effect, right? It has the same effect. If your $100 is only worth $1, you're wiped out.
Yes.
You're wiped out, right? And so essentially, this is exactly what happened in Detroit. The politicians never wanted to face the fact that the economy was declining, the money was fleeing Detroit, the businesses were fleeing Detroit, and the economy was in a spiral, they just kept lauding on more and more government handouts to people, right? Thinking and pretending like nothing was going to happen till the very last day, right?
Yes.
There were some people crying the alarm, but for the most part, the politicians were just like, everything's fine here. It's like that guy from Iraq, right? When they were doing the Iraq war, the Baghdad Bob guy.
Oh yeah.
Everything's fine, guys. And the politicians don't care because most of them that made all those promises were long gone, retired, or dead when the crap hit the fan in Detroit, right?
Yes.
Those people didn't get their feet held to the fire. So it's easy for a politician to say, yes, we're increasing your pension. Yes, we're increasing the money to you, right? Until the shit hits the fan. And
Right.
that is what is going to happen with Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. They're going to just keep going until the very last day. And then they're going to be like, crap, you all have to suffer now because we didn't do our job. Because we didn't do our job.
Well, that and they don't have anything to lose.
Right.
They live off of us.
Yeah.
Our money is how they live. They don't give a fuck about what
They
they're
probably
doing.
won't be there. They probably won't be there anymore.
Oh,
Right. They'll probably be out. So that's the thing. And that's why I'm a big fan of term limits too,
oh,
is
God.
because we need to get rid of these people that are these career politicians that just continuously laud on more and more debt, and they just don't care because they're gonna not, at some point they're not gonna be there, right? And the term limits just kind of gets rid of that corruption, right? I talk about people. They say, oh, the corporations are in charge of America, and I said, no, that's wrong. And they're like, what are you talking about? No, corrupt politicians are in charge of America. And if we didn't have corrupt politicians, corporations wouldn't be in charge because
Hey,
it's not the corporations making the laws, right? The Congress votes on the laws, right? So
right.
the corporations influence the politicians, but the politicians are not principled. They're not principled. We need principled politicians. We need non-corruptible politicians. And so the longer you're in Congress, in my opinion, the more likely it is that you're going to become corrupt because
Absolutely.
yeah, that's just the way it is.
Power attracts bad people, and that's a fact, Jack. But like, what if somebody said to you, hey man, like, okay, libertarians get into office, right? And history shows, anybody who's read a real history book outside of what they learned in school, if they went to public schools, no matter what government's intentions were, whether they were for small or big or whatever it may be, it always turned into big government and force and coercion. How is that going to be different if libertarians take over? Because we talk a
Yeah.
big game, obviously.
Yeah.
If Raytheon's like, hey, Lars, what's up, man? I'm going to give you,
Yeah.
$50
Yeah.
million if you do this for me.
It's even worse than that. It's even worse than that because if you think about the election process and this is something I've kind of learned from running for president, and probably anybody that's ran for a political office kind of starts to understand this situation. And that is that it's really difficult to raise money if you're not known, right? If you are not a Democrat or a Republican, it is very challenging to get people to open their wallet and give you money. Okay. And even if you are a Democrat or Republican, you essentially have to toe the party line if you want the donors to give you the bucks, right? That's the bottom line. So you're not getting elected unless you're already corrupt.
Right.
That's the real. You're not getting elected unless you already have, because you're going to owe favors. And to be honest with you, I can already see, even with my campaign, people are like, oh, I'm going to bro you out with this thing. I'm going to want a favor later. And I'm like, no, bro, that's not that's not how this works, dude. That's not what we're doing here. No, right? And so, but the thing about libertarians that's kind of good is that we don't have those deep ties to corporate, money, right? And then that's also part of the problem, and why we can't get elected is because we don't have that crazy fundraising opportunity, right? When DeSantis, like you were talking about earlier, he got on Twitter, announced his candidacy, and you said it was like a total crap
It
thing.
was so lame. It was like Ben Stein, running for president.
And he raised $1 million in 1 hour. And let me put this in perspective for you. The Libertarian Party as a whole, on a good year, pulls in $2 million. He raised $1 million in 1 hour. Okay, so we're not playing in the same ballpark as these guys are, right? They're playing in a whole different level of, and I guarantee you that $1 million was a lot of $3,200 donations from corporations.
Yeah, because they won't get, IRS forms and shit to fill out.
That's right. There was big money from corporations, and those corporations, they're probably donating to all the candidates, right? Because they just want to cover the base. They don't care if a Republican or a Democrat's in there. A lot of them, they just want to make sure that whoever's in charge has their back when it comes time to like pass whatever law that they need to pass for protecting their business or whatever loophole they want to get passed, and that their lobbyists have access to that candidate, right? That's the bottom line. And I've talked to wealthy donors, and they've basically told me, like, they show me a picture and they're like, here's a picture of me with Clinton and here's a picture of me with Bush, and I gave money to both of them equally so that no matter who was in office, I got to get my privileges. And I'm just like, this system is so wackadoo. It's so screwed up. It's so rigged,
Oh, it's definitely rigged. And like, what happened to Larry Sharp? I don't know if you know the whole story about that.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do, because Larry's my advisor. Larry's advising my campaign, so I know all about that. And he had a fundraiser recently for ballot access. He did like a 4-hour fundraiser thing.
Yes.
And I got on there and I did a matching donation of $5,000 for ballot access in New York, because it's critical. Like what you were saying is, I'm running this campaign and my eyes are just opened to how suppressive the duopoly is and how suppressive the whole system is against anybody trying to break in, right? I mean, they are just, and they're even doing it to their own people now.
Yes.
Right? You got Kennedy, he's running against Biden, and they're like, we're not going to have any debates, guys, because Biden's our pick, and those other people, we're not even going to platform them. We're just going to suppress them because we don't want them even in the game, which is just ridiculous, right? So now, and then those guys are like, this is un-American that you guys would suppress us like this. And I was like, libertarians, we've been here for 50 years getting suppressed, and then now all of a sudden it's a problem? I think you guys missed the boat on that. Come down here with us and yell with us about how suppressive it all is.
Well, that was like when some of the Republicans said they were going to jump off and make their own Patriot Party and some shit. And I was like, good luck, dude. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, good luck to you.
Well, even the Forward Party gave up on ballot access. They were like, it's not attainable. It's so convoluted and so difficult that, that's a problem. And this year, for the Libertarian Party, we're not going to get 50 state ballot access. It's not happening. There's too many states that are just completely messed up. And I've been donating to the states that are close. Right. I donated to Maine because Maine is working really hard to get their ballot access going. And there's probably a couple more states that we're going to be donating money to make sure that they get ballot access. But like you said, in New York, Larry Sharp needs $500,000 to get ballot access.
And he had it. He got
right. Well, they screwed him. They absolutely screwed him. They changed the rules in the middle of the campaign. And we're like, oh, no, we're not doing that anymore. You guys are not allowed.
I was so mad. And here I am in Michigan. Like, I have my own bullshit government here with Gretchen Hitler. And, I call her that all the time. I hate her. But no, man, like, I was furious because they literally did him dirty. Like, the state just said, sure. Hey, man, you're not going to be on the ballot. And even though you got all your signatures, all your money, you did everything you're supposed to do by a T, but we're going to change the fucking rules as we go because the Republicans are going to sue you.
Well, they did that to Ross Perot and they did it to Ron Paul. Right. And they've been doing it the whole time. And it's that's a big part of my campaign, too, is this whole idea of election/voting reform. Right. Is that we need to level the playing field. We need to get rid of gerrymandering. We need term limits. We need ranked choice voting, right? And there's a few other things that are in there that I want to do. And we need level playing field for ballot access. If you want to be a candidate, the rules should be exactly the same for every candidate. It is un-American to have rules different for different groups of people than it, if you want to be of service to America, you should have an equal opportunity to be of service to America, no matter where you come from, no matter what, socioeconomic class you come from. None of that should matter, because the people with the best ideas right now are suppressed from even making it into the system, right?
Yes.
They're just, they don't even, 1,500 people ran for president in 2020. How many of those people that ran did you hear about? Maybe 20, maybe 30.
Not even that many.
Right?
I knew that, obviously there's Trump and Biden, there's Jorgensen, Howie Hawkins ran as the Green Party. And then I don't remember. I know we have them all on the ballot here in Michigan, actually.
Yeah.
We have Libertarians, Green Party, Tea Party, Constitutionalists. They're all there.
Yeah.
Which is actually surprising considering how communist the state is at this point. Like it's insane. They're literally trying to make gun-free zones in Detroit right now.
You were talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I went and did a protest yesterday, actually, with some of the affiliates, local affiliates, about this gun-free zone they're trying to put in the middle of Greektown, Detroit, which is like a very busy area. And it's a major city. Why are you trying to make gun-free zones in a major city when things do happen is beyond me. But, here they are, and they're really pushing for it. So we got out there. We actually got good vibes from people. We did not get good vibes from police.
Yeah, well, maybe they'll make it a drug-free zone also. Like, as soon as they call it a drug-free zone, all drugs will just stop in that area, right? Because the government said, right? Because as soon as the government says you shouldn't do this anymore, then everybody just stops, right? Like everybody just is like, we're not doing that anymore. Oh, a gun-free zone? I'm a bad guy. I can't bring a gun into that area because the government said it's a gun-free zone. So guys, we should probably not go down there with our guns. Said every gangbanger ever.
Exactly. And nothing bad will ever happen.
Yeah,
and
nothing bad, right? And we definitely shouldn't go down there with drugs, because it's a drug-free zone too. And that would, we can't be avoiding the law.
Well, at the end of the day, it's about compliance. And when it comes to gun control, we're done complying. We're not doing it. That's, I don't want to say too much because I know the NSA is listening.
Oh boy, guys. Yeah. Biden put out a thing today about some kind of gun control. And I've just kind of come to the conclusion that we really don't need federal laws around guns. Like there shouldn't, leave it up to the states. I mean, that's not, as a president, that's not my purview, is the state stuff. But as far as the federal goes, unless you're smuggling maybe weapons across the border and I don't know, doing something evil with it, then I could see that being some kind of federal ban of, just more for terrorist threats or something like that. But for the average citizen, there should be no federal bans at all. There should be no federal laws on guns, in my opinion. Somebody asked me, they were like, well, do you, Lars, want everybody to be able to have a bazooka? Would you want your friends to have a bazooka? And I was like, let me think about that for a minute. I started thinking about my friends. And I was like, yeah, because most of my friends have guns right now and they're not shooting anybody. So if they had a bazooka, I assume that they're not going to start using the bazooka because they had one. So I'm like, yeah, I don't really care if they have a bazooka or not. They're not going to do anything with it, just like they're not doing anything with their guns right now. It's ridiculous to just punish everyone for the acts of a few, right? Bad acts of a few people. And so everyone has to suffer for that. And the prohibition just doesn't work. It doesn't even work, right?
Never has, never will.
50 years of the war on drugs, and there's more people doing drugs today than ever before, right? It's just a total failure. It's just a total failure. And so and the politicians, it seems that's their only solution. They're like, well, we just need to ramp up the war on drugs and drugs will finally go away. And I'm like, I want to go in the exact opposite direction of what you guys are talking about. I think the solution is just to open it up make drugs legal, legalize drugs, right? And get the crime out of drugs. Like the whole prohibition just breeds crime. And not only
Right.
that, but I've been really thinking about it more, and prohibition is causing disruption in other governments. The drug war causes countries in South America to have problems because they get these cartels, and the cartels are making money off of selling drugs to Americans, right? And so they're oppressing those people, and then those people want to flee those countries because they're unsafe, and so they're coming to America, and then we have an immigration problem, which basically we created with the drug war.
Right. But at the end of
So
the day, when it comes to the drug war, especially the right wingers, they want to, the hound on the cartels, and, all these dope is coming from Mexico. Who's helping to bring it here? The United States government is the biggest fucking cartel in the in the whole world, period.
yeah, it's
Whether
it's
it be
ridiculous.
guns, drugs, whatever, human trafficking. Who do you think is helping them bring it here? They can't just bring all this shit across the border without being seen, with no help. It's simple, like, logic.
We have to try something different. Obviously, what we've been doing is not working, and doing more of it is not going to work. It's kind of like the homeless situation that's going on across America right now, right? Is that everybody's basically just throwing more money at it and throwing more services at it and thinking that that's going to solve the problem, and it's not. It actually exacerbates the problem because you're feeding the beast, right? You have to address the issue, not feed the beast, right? Because then basically it just grows this whole homeless industrial complex with all these agencies and governments and money being spread out, and then they're protecting their fiefdom. And as we know, government just grows, it never shrinks, right? So now what do all these agencies do? They're basically growing homelessness because that's their job, right? Their job is to take care of homeless people. So the more homeless people that there are, the more money that they make, the more that their jobs are protected. And we got to get away from this like idea. It's the same thing with prisons, right? As soon as we made prisons a profit system, what happened? The prison started getting more and more and more people in it. Well, why is that? Because we turned it into a business, right? We shouldn't have homelessness, should not be a business. The drugs should not be a business, right? Incarceration should not be a business. These are not things the government should be involved in at all, right? Because it only knows how to grow them, right? And I say, if you want the price of something to go up and the service level to go down, just get government involved, right? And that's essentially what that is that they only know how to grow. Government does not know how to shrink at all. And that's what libertarians are all about, right? Libertarians are about like, hey guys, this is out of control. Like, we should curtail this a bit and, start bringing the level of government coercion in your lives down instead of increasing it and ratcheting it up all the time. It's unsustainable.
Well, that's all they ever do is grow. And the funny thing is about the government growth is that, the United States Constitution is supposed to, quote unquote, keep it small and limited. And it's actually been used against us many times. So I'm like, what is this piece of paper really worth anymore? Is it worth anything? Because I'm starting, I'm not going to say I'm starting to feel like it doesn't. I don't feel like it does at all. I feel like
they bastardized it.
What was that?
They bastardized it. They do end runs around it. They use the legal system and the Supreme Court to essentially like whittle away at the Constitution, right? Like what that thing says and what we do are two different things these days, right? As you know, right? And you just look at like the Second Amendment, and you look at what it says and what it's about, and then you look at all the laws that are going on that curtail the Second Amendment, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought government was supposed to protect our rights. I thought that was the whole point of government, right? I thought that was the whole point of the government, was to protect our rights, right? And somehow they have moved this around to not that, and it's more about protecting their paycheck and their fiefdom that they're building.
That's all they ever do. It's like the song that never ends, honestly. And we've been played this whole time to think that these people are going to protect our rights and protect the borders and, be fiscally responsible. And they don't do any of the above. They just don't, And the fact of the matter is, the American people have become complacent when it comes to this stuff. But I guarantee you this, and this is one thing I want to get into before we go, is that we need to learn as a society and as a country how money works and how the Fed works. And if everybody understood how the Fed worked and how the money worked,
Yeah.
there would not only would people leave the duopoly, there would probably be an uprising that you wouldn't believe, and that, you know, it'd be easy, it would be a shoo-in for libertarians to get in. And there's one cry out that I would really like to harp on when it comes to getting libertarians elected. Rather than being like, hey, I'm a libertarian, you know, we need to vote libertarians in, and I know you're going to agree with me on it because I know you're in on it. Learn Bitcoin. If you learn Bitcoin, you will have no use for centralized banking or no use for centralized government whatsoever. Nada, nothing.
Yeah. So I think part of that is that we need to encourage adoption of decentralized currencies.
Yes.
And at the same time, we need to absolutely not implement central bank digital currencies. It's the central bank digital currency is like the end game of the ultimate authoritarian push to just like, you know, make us all. And here's the thing, I was thinking about it and I was like, how could they force everybody to, because everybody's like, oh, central bank digital currency, I just won't use it, I won't participate with it. And I was thinking, well, how can the government force everybody to use it? And I thought, oh, it's so simple, it's so easy actually, and everybody will just comply, just like they all put on masks and all got a and all, you know, and did their thing during the pandemic, right? And the thing is that most workers in America get paid through payroll.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the federal government can make a new law that says that the FICA taxes that you pay, that the employer pays and that the employee pays, has to be paid in central bank digital currency, because they're the federal government and it's federal taxes, and they'll be like, you got to pay it this way. And then the employers and the and all the payroll companies will just be like, look, we just got to pay in central bank digital currency because it's the easiest way to do it. So now you're a regular guy working at the local grocery store and you get your paycheck and it's in central bank digital currency, and you're like, I don't want this, I want something else. And they're like,
that's what we
there's
got.
no choice, bro.
Yeah.
There's no choice. What are you going to do? And so now you're just stuck with it, right? So we actually have to get ahead of this and kill it before it becomes a thing. Like once it becomes a thing, it's game over.
Oh,
like
yeah.
we cannot let this come into action. So as president, I absolutely will not pass anything that has central bank digital currency in it. And I will be promoting decentralized currencies and more opportunities for different kinds of financial systems, because I feel like we need that in order to keep our government honest.
Right.
That there is a thing called the power of the purse. And the power of the purse is you control your money and you decide what you're going to pay and buy with it, right? And we absolutely do not want the government telling us what we can buy, when we can buy, and how much of it we can buy. And that is what central bank digital currency is. And it's so gross and so over the top. And it is really the next step to a one world kind of dominant, you know, if you're into that kind of conspiracy theory stuff of like, they're all coming for us. Well, that if you are that, that's the direct path to that crap. That, you know, if you're afraid of that kind of stuff, you be very afraid of central bank digital currency, because it is gross.
Well, not only will the CBDC solidify our enslavement, it really will, because they will be tracking everything and anything you do. They're going to know exactly where you are at all times, because if you go buy something, they're going to know, hey man, this guy just got gas in Topeka, or, you know,
or imagine the gun-free zone that you were talking about, right?
Yes.
Greek town or something like that. Now, let's say that they've decided that you're a shit stirrer and they don't like you. And so they say, you know what? Listen, Sean, you can go anywhere in Detroit that you want, but you're not allowed to buy anything in the Greek zone.
Right.
Because you're a bad person. And so we don't want you buying stuff down there. So when you go down there, your money won't work. And you're like, well, what am I supposed to do? Bring my chickens and trade my eggs and try to get a soda pop or something? Like, it just doesn't, you're just unbanked at that point. And what we saw happen to the Canadian truckers when they were going against their government and then they were just like debanked, you
Yeah.
realize how tied to the government you are, because if you use the banking system today, you're 100% reliant on the government. 100%. Like,
Yes.
if the government shut down your banking tomorrow, how would you feed your family?
And that's what the CBDC would open up the floodgates to immediately. They would have
Yeah.
direct access to your funds and just take it from you whenever they felt like it.
And you know, it's really interesting. We basically debanked Russia, right? We
Yes.
when Russia attacked Ukraine, we got all the other countries of the world to stop doing business with Russia and to stop trading currencies with Russia and to stop them from participating in the financial system, right? So if the US government is powerful enough to debank a whole nother country, imagine what do you think you're going to be able to do against the government when it
Right.
decides to debank you? You ain't doing nothing. You ain't doing nothing.
Not
Like,
a
you're
damn
just
thing.
done. You're just done. And it's almost like they've put you in prison, because you literally will be homeless, because you won't be able to like do anything, because you get a job. The only thing you could do is maybe get a job at a place that is a food place, and and get paid in food or something like that. That's about all you could
Tips
really
or
do.
whatever, it's
Right. I mean, it's like, so it's just really scary. And I think we need to encourage decentralized currencies, other ways of financing, and we absolutely should not be banning that stuff, because that's the path to freedom.
right.
The digital currencies is the path to freedom. It is the way to get out of the under the thumb of the government, right? But they've been reining it in since I started. I started looking at crypto in probably 2016, maybe,
Okay.
um, and they've been reining it in ever since, right? That the know your customer laws, the crackdowns on all the exchanges, because when you're doing crypto, you still have to have an onboard and offboard ramp to getting your US dollars and turning it into crypto. And so
Right.
they control those on ramps and off ramps, right? I mean, once you have it, then it becomes a lot easier for me and you to transact with those things. But if you are a worker, your job is not paying you in crypto. So
No.
you get your money in dollars, and then you have to convert that into crypto. And that conversion process is where the centralization happens. That's where the government controls you, right? So I think you're right. I think most people should have some crypto that they're holding it's kind of like the old, or have some gold stashed away or something, so that if the government completely debanks you, you could at least survive for a while, until you figured out something else, or you could flee the country or something. I don't know. But at that point, we're probably all screwed.
Right. But like, I feel like there should be more than one form of currency,
Yeah.
whether it be, gold, silver. We need to get back on the gold standard, honestly. Like that was one thing that actually kept the government somewhat in check. I don't want to
Yeah.
say it kept them in check, but it kept them somewhat in check.
Yeah. I think the gold standard would be fairly difficult at this point, just given the vastness of the dollars that we have, and the fact that every other country would want to do that. But with that being said, China's new BRICS currency that they're trying to put together, they're talking about backing it with oil and gold.
Yes.
And
Gold's on board
so,
with it.
what's that?
Gold's gonna back the brick system. It's already
Yeah,
like,
yeah. And so that would be, that kind of changes the game a little bit, right? So then it's like, okay, do you want um the fractional reserve crap system that is the Federal Reserve, or do you want this system that's backed by actual gold and silver and oil? I don't know. I think I would probably pick the one that's backed by gold and silver and oil, right?
absolutely.
and so then you get in this weird situation where you're not backing the United States anymore. You're backing China, Brazil, India, and that sort of thing. And so that could turn into a real cluster too. So maybe the whole thing will kind of force America's hand, and America will have to start getting more fiscally responsible, just because other countries are going to be offering something that's better.
Well, they're leaving the monetary system. They're leaving it. They're out of here. I
Yeah.
mean, BRIC
Yeah.
system's getting bigger. It's Russia, China, Canada, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Brazil, you know, I mean, big countries are leaving in droves, and and rightfully so. I mean, why would they want to be a part of a monetary system that is being destroyed by the day by the US government and the Federal Reserve?
Well, I think a big part of it was just as pandemic opened our eyes that our supply chain was weak and that there was holes in it where we would be in trouble if we went to war with people. I think that the unbanking of Russia freaked out every other country on earth because they're like,
Probably.
holy crap, if they can unbank Russia, they can unbank us. And we don't want to be unbanked because we just talked about what happens when you get unbanked. You're destroyed, right? You're destroyed. And so they're like, we need a decentralized system that's not reliant on America because we don't want to get Russia'd, right? Like that's the real, right? So I think we kind of, as usual, the government has created a bigger problem out of the problem that they were trying to solve.
I mean, that's what they do best. I mean, everything they touch is a dumpster fire, period. Like, it's just what it is. Look at healthcare, look at education,
Yes.
look at look at the government jobs that are out there. I mean, shit, there was for a while there, I couldn't get mail. I wouldn't get mail for days. And then I'm serious. Like, this was 2 years ago in 2021. I couldn't get my fucking mail, dude. You know what I mean? And that's a government run organization.
Yeah.
You know?
It's shenanigans for sure.
But I mean, you know, I've seen you kind of chime in on some of the stuff that me and my sponsor, the Infinite Seal Syndicate, have started with the Liberty Book Club. And we've been talking about money. I have some books here that, you know, I would like to show people that could get them educated on how the monetary system works and how money works. And I would like you to chime in on some of it too, because you've been sharing some books here and there too.
Yeah,
I haven't seen you do.
I wish I had more time to read because I have a stack of books over here that I want to read, and it's just like campaigning has kind of turned into a real, you know, it's a real pounder. I'm at this more than full time right now, and so I keep thinking I'm going to get to that book. I'm also writing a book in the middle of all this stuff as well, and so that's something that we're working on. So I've been remiss to even proofread the book that we're writing. So I'm running out of time. But yeah, I think that reading books and getting educated is critical. You can't make an informed decision if you're not informed. Right. And we're not, and the TV isn't informing us. They just tell us the talking points they want us to like parrot. And so if we're going to have real information, we've got to get it from sources outside of mainstream media or even social media. We have to get it from thinkers, right? And the thinkers are people who write books. That's the bottom line.
So here's what I got here right now. And I want you to chime in after I show these books off a little bit. I got The Case Against the Fed by Murray Rothbard.
Okay, yep. I saw you posting that the other day.
Anything Rothbard is amazing. Obviously, you have End the Fed by Ron Paul.
I do. And what I posted a picture the other day. Oh, so there's a doctor on Twitter, and I've recently come across him. I'll link you to him. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head.
Talking about Dr. Shiva?
No, it's a different guy, but he is crazy smart. Like, he's a PhD economist guy that's really, really sharp. And I've been just listening to his stuff, and I'm like, wow, this guy really gets stuff. And so I asked him something like, well, how do you feel about the Fed or something like that, right? And he posted a picture of Ron Paul holding up that book.
Nice.
And so I thought that was hilarious. So I went and I grabbed that book and I made the exact same picture as Ron Paul holding the book.
Nice.
And then I sent that to him, and he was laughing. He thought that was funny. So yeah, no, I think we need more of that kind of stuff. And you know, there's a lot of ideas on fixing that, but I think decentralized currency is definitely a big piece of fixing the Fed problem.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. If you end the Fed, you end the wars, and you end the empire. Yep. And it'll go in that order, because the wars need the Fed to keep going. Otherwise, they don't have money to pay for it.
Right.
And then if there is no war, there's no more empire, because what do you need them for?
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of my thing, is like, learn econ, learn money. Like, what are some books you would want to throw out there? Like, what are some good reads that you'd want to, you know, tell people to get interested when it comes to learning money and shit.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. My education on money was really like old school TV shows before there was really MSN. There was these old school TV shows like Wall Street Week with Louis Rukeyser,
Oh
or
wow.
the Nightly Business Report. It was like these old school guys, and that was in the days of like Ross Perot, like what I was talking about earlier. And that's really where I got my teeth sunk in about economics, was way back in the 80s, when they were talking about getting rid of the debt then, and the debt was only like $2 trillion, right? Like they
Right.
were like, this debt is unsustainable at $2 trillion. I mean, some like if Ross Perot was alive today, he would like lose his mind that we're $32 trillion in debt,
Yes.
right? Like he would just be
Yes.
like, what did you guys do? You guys are so broken. What the hell? Hold on one quick second.
Yep.
I get my giant stack of books that I've been meaning to read here, and
Yes.
there was a couple ones that have been recommended to me, and maybe you'll know some of them, like this one here. It's called The Best of Intentions: 50 Thoughts to Freedom by Steve Kerbal.
Okay.
It's hard to see on there.
Yep.
And of course, like you said, Rothbard, Anatomy of the State.
Anything Rothbard.
uh but I like this Harry Brown books. Have you read any Harry Brown
I've
books?
not read any Harry Brown yet.
He ran for president as libertarian, and this book here opened my mind to government coercion and how
Okay.
much government coercion we have in our lives. And I think that's a really good one. And then, I was telling you about that I'm going to Maine, right?
Mhm.
And in Maine, the chair of Maine, I was just looking through my books one day, and I saw the name on the book, and I was like, what? I know that guy. That's the chair of Maine who wrote Closing Freedom.
No shit.
And Harrison Kemp is the chair of Maine. So that's a
Okay.
sales guide for today's liberty activist. So Harrison Kemp, I think he's a good guy. We're going to be working hard on my plan for winning an electoral vote in Maine. And I'm going, like I said, I'm going to their convention in a week, and we're going to be chopping it up about how we're going to win this electoral vote in Maine and put libertarians on the map for the first time since 1970.
Let's do it, man. I'm down. Like that would be great to see. I want to see y'all win. That would be the greatest thing ever, honestly, because I'm big for change. We're not going to see change if we keep electing the same people over and over and over again. It will just
Amen to that.
it's gonna
Yeah.
it's gonna get worse. It's never gonna get better. The Republicans can shout all they want about being fiscally responsible. None of them have. I've called them out. I've called anybody from the GOP and or the DNC out on Twitter saying, "Hey, send your people. I want to debate you on spending on my show." And it's crickets from all of them. Maybe it's just
Yeah.
because I'm small time. I don't know, but
Yeah.
like we know they're not fiscally responsible. None of them are.
No.
None of them.
No. They
Yeah.
all have their special interest and their things that they're trying to push through. Even the most principled ones that are in there have their things that they're willing to sell out for. And it's yeah, I guess, like I said, you get in there, and I think it just kind of corrupts you. I think that's part of the process of getting elected, unfortunately, which is kind of a crying shame. And I don't know, I wasn't alive 150 years ago or 100 years ago, so I can't tell you if politicians were more principled then than they are now, or if this is just the way that it is, right? That it's always kind of been like that. But I think part of it is with the media and with all the news and the access to information that we have, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because we also have access to propaganda and gaslighting like nobody's business. And before, you might have just read the newspaper about some presidential candidate, and that was all the information you got, right?
Yep.
Now it's like this culture war and this like slamming each other all the time on every platform, and it's toxic, right? And we are in a culture now where it's not about what your policies are or what you're going to do for America. It's that you're going to save America from the other evil bad guy that might get in charge
Yes.
if you don't vote for them, right? So that's why I like ranked choice voting, because it gets rid of that tit for tat negative campaigning, and it's like, oh well, here's a third person and this person actually has policy, so now I have to answer to that, which they don't have answers to. They don't have policy, they just have other guy bad vote for me.
Well, because they don't care about policy. At this point, policy doesn't even matter. They don't
Yeah.
care about the monetary system. They don't care about, society as a whole. It's all about how are we going to get the wicked Democrats out of the way, or how are we going to get the wicked Republicans out of the way? And that's it.
Yeah.
And then they kind of just figure out policy as they go. And here we are as Americans going, hey guys, what the fuck, man? You're stealing all our money. You're sending it here, there, and everywhere. You're not helping us at all. This has to stop.
Yeah.
At some point. And, what do you do? I mean, it's either vote for change or keep being slaves. I mean, that's where we're at. And it's sad state of affairs. And I hate to sound like that, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. And they're just going to keep taking from us.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's sort of why I'm running, right? Is if you're running for president of the United States, it elevates your voice a little bit, right? You get a little more authority than you would before. And so I'm using that voice to basically spread these messages that the system is broken. The system needs to be changed. Here's some ways that we could change it. Common sense ideas to change the system, to make it fairer for all, more equitable for all, so that we have a level playing field, right? Because we all deserve to have an equal opportunity to rise up to our potential and to excel in our lives, right? And we all should have that opportunity. And right now we don't, because government's in the way.
I can't agree more with you, man. And Lars, my friend, thank you so much for your time. We've been at this for a minute, so I don't want to keep you too long. But
yeah, my pleasure.
Check out my man, the Infinite Zeal Syndicate. He sponsors my show. He's a Liberty Mind that just wants to find other Liberty Minds. He's got the sexy merch like this hat. He's got shirts, hoodies. Go check him out at _Infinite Zeal on Twitter. And Lars, before we go, do you want to say anything, man?
Yeah. Well, so the thing is that we talked a little bit about how hard it was for libertarians to raise money, right? Mm-hmm. And so we talked about Vivek a little bit earlier on, and Vivek has 40,000 individual donors. Okay. And I want people to donate to me, because when I get to the convention in 2024, I want to say that I have thousands of individual donors who support what I'm talking about, right? And the best way to show support, even if it's $1, go to Lars24.com and send me $1, which basically says, hey, Lars, I like what you're talking about. I support what you're talking about. Maybe I can't afford to give you $10 or $20 or whatever. Give me $1 so that when I get to the convention, I can say, hey, I have thousands of people that are supporting me financially and want me to be a success, right? And so you can do that at Lars24.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Lars for President, and on Twitter at Libertarian Lars.
My man, dude, I dig it. And I appreciate you coming back on. It's been great. At some point I'm going to have you back on as things get closer and stuff and get heated up. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens out there with you and the other guys. That'll be great. But until next time, peace, love, and liberty. Y'all be good.
All right. Peace out.